Debut of Nitro has an estimated 2,000 fans at the Mall of America in Minneapolis, and it was overall a huge success as far as making a mark the very first night out. And one of the things they did is they tried to rely on things they knew had been successful. One of those, of course, was the Jushin Liger-Brian Pillman match. Dave Meltzer writes, over Christmas week of 91, these two had, with possible exception of Flair and Steamboat, the best series of house show matches in the history of WCW, feuding over the now defunct WCW light heavyweight title. The series climaxed with a pay-per-view match in Milwaukee that placed second in the 92 Match of the Year category. Shortly thereafter, Bill Watts took over control of WCW, dumped the division, and never used Liger to his potential after that. Liger, 31, who was generally considered the best worker and best flyer in the business during that early part of the decade, returned to action on August 11th after being out for nearly 11 months with a broken ankle. So this is their first time back, putting Liger in a prominent position, and he's in the first match against Brian Pillman, and this is a proven winner from the times they've done it 4 years before. Overall, Meltzer gave this match a 3.5 star rating. It went just under 7 minutes. The finish comes when Liger goes for a German suplex, but Pillman reverses it into a cradle. He notes that it didn't appear the fans knew what to make of this match, but they enjoyed it. And he did note there were some missed spots and bad timing early, but it turned into a very good, albeit rushed match. What did you think of the match, Tony?
I thought it was super. I thought it was a great way to begin our very first Nitro. And like Meltzer wrote, they had had some spectacular matches in the past. Two schools of thought here, Conrad. There is we'll call it the Japan or New Japan or All Japan, whatever, theory, and the Bill Watts theory. Bill Watts dumped the cruiserweight division because I thought he was not a guy who was high on a bunch of high spots. He was a guy who was high on working. If you like a bunch of high spots, you liked Jushin Liger. You like what's going on in wrestling from Japan. If you liked a match with two great workers going at it, you would have Ricky. That was my wife barking. Sorry. You liked Ricky Steamboat against Ric Flair. But I thought the match was very, very good. I thought Liger was tremendous, although if you have a mask over your entire face, it takes away from your ability to sell, I think. It just takes something away from that. You know, to me, selling took not only being able to feel it and being able to react to it, but being able to react to it, a great move or a great blow or something facially. He didn't have that. But be that as it may, he and Brian had another fine match, and it was a great start to the event. Make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
Okay, let me say that I've never been a fan of a bunch of freaking high spots. Bam, 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 bam. Because if you just do a bunch of fucking high spots and you don't sell it, then the high spots don't mean shit. And that was my theory back long ago when the business was a little bit different than it is now.
Meltzer writes, Bischoff can't call a match, and both were worlds better than Steve McMichael, who came off as obnoxious and clueless at the same time, which is not the best combination for someone playing a babyface role. The sooner they drop him, the better, and it isn't going to be sooner. So not well-received debut here for Mongo. The second match on the card, of course, this is seemingly a failsafe here. Flair and Sting, once again, after the very first Clash of the Champions, and obviously the last Nitro, well, it was the first Nitro as well. They go to a no contest after about 11 and a half minutes. Meltzer writes, this was the typical Flair-Sting match everyone has seen, except they also rushed because they didn't have as much time. He notes that Luger came out early and then left, and Arn Anderson came out later in the match with them teasing that he and Flair had made up and to make you think that he was going to help Flair. Of course, that's not how it happens. After the ref calls for the bell, when Anderson does a run-in, Anderson attacks Flair, and they have a brief brawl. He gives this 3.25 stars. This is the first time we had really seen in a primetime spot like this, Flair and Anderson not working together, but working opposite each other, and they would have a match at the Fall Brawl 1995 pay-per-view. Were you happy to finally see Arn get this opportunity?
No question. Arn Anderson is one of my favorites of all time and one of my close friends still in the business. We still stay in contact. Anybody who ever worked in this business and has an unkind thing to say about Arn Anderson is full of shit. And whatever he got into business, he certainly deserved. You know, he's had some pretty serious neck injuries in his career, but everybody, I think, loves him. And I was thrilled to see him get this chance. Let me say this. Let me react to a comment. Meltzer said in his comment, everybody has seen these two before. I'm not so sure everybody has seen them. Everybody in his world has seen it, but now we're going to something different, and we're probably bringing in new fans.
Absolutely.
So putting Flair and Sting on there, everybody, no, not everybody's seen it. This is something great to put on there. And maybe fans, maybe millions of fans haven't seen this before. There's a, you know, and I think Meltzer would agree with this. There's a cross section here, if I'm using the term correctly, of the people who follow Meltzer and the people who follow wrestling closely, and of just the casual fan who have never seen this before.
Yeah.
So I think putting them on there was very good. And I think saying that everyone has seen it is an inaccurate term.
After this, Flash Norton shows up out of nowhere, and his name was never even mentioned until the angle was over. Norton goes face-to-face with McMichael, who, Meltzer writes, nearly succeeded in killing the entire angle Ed Whalen style by laughing at someone who's supposed to be a killer heel.
Yeah.
Savage showed up to save the day in more ways than one, and after a commercial break, they announced that match had been signed for next week, Norton and Savage. What did you think about this debut for Scott Norton in WCW?
Well, now I'm going back and again doing some Monday morning quarterbacking here. I think that he came across as it wasn't well done because the microphone. Hold on, I got a bunch of dogs coming down to my studio here, and my wife. Yeah, just stand over there and don't say a word, please. I love you. I'll take that.
You want me to shut up?
Yeah, I'll take you out to dinner tonight.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I only say that because she never cooks.
That's a lie.
I'm doing a freaking show here.
Yeah, your numbers would go up too.
Okay.
I want to cut.
Okay. Lois Schiavone does a run in. So anyway, I even forgot where in the fuck I was.
Everybody did. Scott Norton, there's a microphone. He comes out. You had a Monday morning quarterback comment about the microphone with Norton.
Yeah. The Norton is screaming. Eric finally picks up the microphone because you can't hear what they're saying.
Right.
I'm not so sure Mongo laughing at Norton buries Norton, because if Mongo's a tough guy, you know, it's like, I'm a tough guy too. So I don't know if that really got into hurt the angle or not. What I thought about that whole thing, go back and listen to it. It was funny because the Macho Man called Scott Norton Les Thornton.
I think he called him Flash Norton.
I thought he said Les Thornton.
You're old too, though. Match number 3 on the show. Hulk Hogan beats Big Bubba Rogers to keep the WCW title in about 7 minutes. After the match, of course, you know what happens. Foot to the face, leg drop, pin, boom, boom. After the match, the Dungeon of Doom attacks Hulk Hogan. This, to me, comes off really, really bad, considering that we just talked about how we're going to try to do less cartoon and more reality base. And now we've got Earthquake out here painted up like a fucking shark. Luger makes the save, and then eventually Hogan and Luger bump backs and then turn around and go nose to nose. Savage and Sting try to break them up. They go to commercial. We come back, promo back and forth, and we set up a Hogan-Luger confrontation in Miami. Meltzer rated this 2.25 stars. What did you think of the match and the angle here?
Match was okay. I had seen Hogan and Bubba, or I had seen Hogan and Bubba when They were Hogan and Big Boss Man. But that's back when I was in the WWE, so it wasn't one of their greater matches.
They had great matches in the WWE.
What's that?
Those matches in the WWE, the cage match circuit they did was outstanding.
It was one of the best, no question. And I was very fortunate to call one on MSN or Madison Square Garden Network. One of those when they did the big superplex off the top of the cage for that one. Then they would redo it again on the Saturday Night Main Event. But I didn't think it was one of the great matches, but I thought the end of it did a heck of a job of setting up the next week.
Yeah.
I thought it was very, very well done. And let me tell you one of the reasons it was well done. One of the most unsung heroes in all of wrestling is Mean Gene Okerlund. If you go back and look at that, his reaction, the way he set that up, the way he can play off these guys in the microphone. We talk about the great wrestling announcers being rightfully so, Jim Ross, Gordon Soley. But to me, one of the greatest wrestling announcers ever, and certainly the greatest stickman ever, was Mean Gene Okerlund.
Sure.
He made that sound as big as we wanted it to be. And there was no one better to hold that microphone than Gene. So I thought it came off very, very well. It was a great way to set up the next week's event. And I think a lot of that credit should go to Gene Okerlund for what he did that night as well. His voice was tremendous, as we know. But his reaction, the way he set it up, and the excitement that he portrayed when that match was signed, to me, helped sell that as well. And that's just me being a Gene Okerlund fan. And I've known that lousy fucking dirtbag for years, and I love him.
Well, so there you go.
And now he's a lousy old fucking dirtbag.
What'd you think of the rating when it came out?
Don't remember it.
2.5.
Okay, so there you go.
Of course, the first Nitro ran unopposed. There was no Monday Night Raw that week. They wouldn't go head-to-head until the second week, the September 11th edition. And that week, Nitro again drew a 2.5 rating to Monday Night Raw's 2.2. So WCW has done the unthinkable. And in the first head-to-head, they toppled the giant Monday Night Raw.
Eric thought that there was a 5 rating that we could get, and he thought we could share it. There you go.
And that was the story of the very first edition of Monday Night